John Cena, we are going to talk about next. He was interviewed by the Associated Press, and I definitely saw a lot of backlash towards some of his comments because he was asked about the sexual misconduct allegations against Vince McMahon, and if it was hard for him to reconcile the feelings that he has for Vince McMahon regarding the allegations attached to him. And John Cena said no, he does not. And he says, I mean, everyone has the right to have their perspective. I have the right to have mine. When you love somebody, you take them as imperfectly perfect as they are. We all make mistakes. We all have poor decisions. Lord knows I've made my collection of poor choices. That doesn't mean I'm not going to love somebody. There's no way I can go on record and say I don't love Vince McMahon. So if you were just to hear that paragraph in its in a vacuum without the context, you would be thinking, God, what did this guy do? I mean, did he no-show an important meeting that John Cena was going to be a part of? Did he prevent John Cena from taking a really important movie role? To me, it was very much... to me, it was a guy that obviously has an incredible amount of reverence for Vince McMahon, while at the same time, to me, greatly underselling the severity of these allegations. And I'm not saying that, listen, you're a great admirer of this person, that you have to trash them in the media. I don't think you have to trash someone to say that it is to be a lot more stern when asked about this. And John Cena is a very savvy individual that has to be knowing these questions are coming, especially when you're talking to an outlet like the Associated Press, and that this topic might come up about Vince McMahon. And I think having a better answer than we all make mistakes.
Yeah. I think I understand it's a tough position maybe for somebody like in his position to talk about something like this. But you would figure that like he would be maybe a bit more prepared for an answer, and maybe this was his prepared answer, and maybe he felt like this was, what accurately represented his feelings, and I'm sure it does. But I think the unfortunate part of it is that it's an answer that seems to really minimize these allegations that are a lot more, than simply mistakes. I don't
sexual misconduct, hush money payments, accused of coercing a woman into oral sex. Like, this is say nothing of the settlement of the decades old
Right.
Rita Chatterton case. I mean, that is something that I look at more and more, is how some of these stories, and it's like how we couch the language of how these are talked about. It's they're not. It's like you take away the exact description of what is being accused, and we just package them as mistakes, or just we make them seem a lot more digestible when they are just when you take away the what we're actually talking about here. And I think for a lot of people, you hear this enough and you turn this into a story that you contort in your mind as, well, he just had a relationship with a woman he worked with. What's the big deal? Or this is a money story. This is just about money. And it's like you couch it how you want to view this figure. And if you're somebody that wants to hold Vince McMahon in some high regard, you're going to be a lot more easy on what it is we're talking about here, instead of just laying out the exact allegations, and that they should not be just swept aside and just being addressed as poor decisions.
Right. Yeah. I do feel the need to specify that they are allegations. The Rita Chatterton case has been, I guess, dealt with, through a settlement, but Vince does continue to allege that those allegations are false. So I think it's important to state that, and maybe it's important to kind of view that through the lens of John Cena as well, who seems to speak of this person as a family member. Now, his answer does indicate that there were faults and mistakes made. Now, what exactly does he believe factually are the mistakes that Vince McMahon made? Entering into like hush money agreements with employees that he's had these sort of relations with? Is it simply having the relations themselves? And if you maybe view it through that sort of understanding, is what John Cena said enough, I guess, is it a big enough response? Maybe, just to kind of encompassing maybe, all that. Not. I don't think so. Like even then, I still feel like it's somebody like a John Cena in the public eye probably ought to take a bigger stand, against like something that is pretty like frowned upon, I suppose, in the workplace. And again, it's very hard to maybe
or maybe not comment on it. Like, listen, I'm not out here to persecute John Cena. He's not the person that is the center of this story. And I mean, I look at it and I would ask you, Wade, that like if you had someone that you were extremely close with that was accused of something awful,
like you, okay,
like
yeah.
I would honestly hope that I would have a friendship with you that you would be honest with me and could be very disappointed in a decision I made. If I made a horrible error, I would not want to rely on friends that are just telling me what I want to hear and divorcing me from reality. Now, I might not want to hear you say that in the press, but I would think that you would maybe be in a position where you would have to.
Yeah. And so I don't necessarily know if like a no comment would be, it'd be better for Cena, because look at how much like people like you and I are dissecting, like this paragraph of words. And that's just unfortunately the nature of celebrity, the nature of media.
And this is also somebody that, I mean, he really stepped in it last year with the whole Taiwan controversy. And this is somebody that is, I would say, more than 99% of the pro wrestling population is as adept at media as anybody else, that has that is most likely to get a spotlight based on how he handles a situation like this, that frankly, 99% of wrestlers are not going to be held to like a great account if they give some awful answer. Yeah. John Cena is one of those that is going to have a lot more attention. And if this were happening in another industry with a major figure, I think this would be a bigger story of somebody just... And John Cena is not the only one of many others that have just excused this because of who the person is. And that if this were some middle rung independent promoter that was accused of this person would be exiled from the industry and would be completely excoriated by his peers and colleagues. But power is, and friendships are going to trump a lot of that. But most of all, power is going to.
Yeah. So let's get back to the example. If like, you were being accused of something in the public eye and I was being asked to comment on it. I would if I would probably feel the need to comment on it, and I would hope that you'd be okay if I spoke my truth. And I think my truth would maybe sound like,
if you agreed to an interview, okay?
Yeah.
And there was something awful that had happened with me. You would go into that interview with the knowledge, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to be asked about this. Sure. How am I going to address this? And likewise, like I would know that this question is probably coming my way. I should probably know what I'm going to say.
As I'm sure Cena might have been prepared for, right? And so like, what would my answer be? I would hope that in that time I would have had a chance to speak to you personally about like, let's say like, some of these allegations that might be as severe as what like, Vince McMahon has been alleged to do. And then at that point, it would kind of be up to me to believe you or not. And then my response would be, something according to that. If I didn't, like if say you had an excuse and I didn't believe you, I would feel the need to like say it like publicly. Now, if I did believe you and if I believed like, okay, like John, you made a mistake. I it's not hard for me to reconcile my feelings towards you. You and I like are still incredibly good friends. I feel like I would probably say the same thing, as Cena. Now we of course don't know like, what sort of conversation Cena and Vince have, but like I feel like we can maybe assume that Cena has an understanding of sorts of like what Vince went through. I guess it's just hard for me to see that from the outside, what that understanding would be, considering these allegations.
Yeah. I also look at it from the fact that I think that and believe me, I'm not saying that nobody cares, but I also feel like our reaction to this is that, oh boy, this could really come back and hurt John Cena. And in reality, I think there are far more people that have just moved on from this, that are not looking at this with anywhere near the the insight that, you know, a handful of people really are, truly.
Yeah, yeah. And does he just?
There was not this crazy outrage that Vince McMahon was spotted at a WWE event, this person who has been accused of all of this. Like, that was not the controversy. The controversy was, is this guy booking Raw? Like, that is the easy topic that people can devour and talk about for hours. But when you get into the allegations and such, that's where people just, I don't think they want to necessarily dive into that aspect of things.
Sure. And I feel like I kind of credit Cena for actually giving us an answer and not just maybe stepping away from it. I also don't know if he should be, if he should lose his anything really. Like,
I'm not saying he should lose anything. I'm more so saying that I do find it disappointing that continually we seem to get this reaction as though it's just this minor infraction. I mean, to be accused of such things, and the fact that we have there was a police report after the Tanzabar incident. Like, this is not just as though there has not been a pattern of certain actions. Like, this is somebody that has been accused of some horrendous things, and to me that is a major issue with this individual that I hope that despite this complete privacy that he has opted to have, no addressing of any of these allegations, I hope it is someone that has looked back and has some regret over this, that has learned something from this. Because on the outside looking in, the lesson has been, if this happens, you have to go about and conduct the right paperwork. That has been the lesson that his company has displayed, and one that even taking not properly reporting what should have been company funds, you still are back into your same position of power. So even that was not some drastic penalty that he underwent. Yeah.
Well, I mean, sort of, I guess, I don't know, losing his role, in his company. Like, how will we know that he's, felt any sort of repercussion as a result of this? Like, I think it's in his interest, and it's in the company's interest to just kind of let this entire thing wash away. So I wouldn't expect any sort of comment publicly, about how much he might have changed, if at all, unless there was some other purpose. Maybe this documentary, that Bill Simmons is putting together, might tackle the issue, and maybe we'll finally get Vince to speak on it a little bit. But I'm even somewhat doubtful of that, just maybe not understanding like that it probably serves them really no benefit to just kind of bring the news up. But anyway, kind of getting back to this, like, I certainly don't expect, this to be solved through a John Cena response. Some part of me kind of wonders if we're looking too deep into this, like to try to pull too much out of it to be able to, say how much can we really kind of conclude. Maybe what we can say that is, like, the way Cena seemed to couch this as like a guy making mistakes, it on the surface, just reading that quote, definitely seems to minimize, what the allegations are. So I would love, for maybe somebody, if they have an opportunity, to continue to ask him about something like this. But seeing the response that even an answer like that, seemed to create, he probably won't want to talk about it that much more.
Yeah, and it was just interesting that it was a very similar response that we heard from Bryan Danielson last year when he was asked by Nick Houseman about this at the StarCast event, and he said that, in general, when it comes to Vince, is maybe it's more about love. If you love somebody, it's that people make mistakes and you love them regardless. And both of them invoking love that they have for Vince McMahon. And I would be very curious if Vince McMahon truly has that friend or friends of his. Like, think about what his life has been that we have known. It's all tied up in work, where he has people working underneath him. And to have that network of people that would be those to talk to a Vince McMahon and actually have friends that would be able to speak with him about why this is wrong. Like, this is the psychoanalysis of Vince McMahon that I would love to know.
So a few things that are interesting about it is that the fact that, like, when Danielson said that, I didn't see this turn into as big of a headline as when John Cena said it. And
there was a little bit of that. There was some response to it. But you're right. And
I
to
didn't
be
see as
quite
much
honest,
negativity, and to me, there's a big difference because Brian Danielson is one of the most beloved, and I think like genuinely like good people that we can tell, at least, you know, from the public's perspective in this industry. And when he says something like that, somehow like we seem to accept it. At least, you know, I'm speaking maybe just of sort of the zeitgeist, you know.
Cena's pretty
when John
beloved
Cena
by
says
this
it.
point, I would say.
I don't know, not to the level of a Brian Danielson, at least, but
He's
okay.
pretty widely respected at this point, I would say.
I mean, the Taiwan thing, I think seems to, you know, offer a different opinion.
That was a bigger
Okay.
non-wrestling story, I would say. The Taiwan thing, like that did not get that too much attention within wrestling when it happened.
Right. But, you know, like both Cena and Bryan have suggested that this is a mistake. I think the big question for me is, does Vince McMahon actually view these as mistakes? Or are they mistakes simply on the surface? Or are they mistakes simply from a financial, you know, professional perspective? Like, oh, my career was ruined. I was ousted from the board as a result of this. Don't get caught. Like, you know, like, was it that type of thing? Or does he truly regret his actions? We don't know, and I don't know if we will, because I don't know if I'll ever hear Vince talk about it.
No, that's probably not something that he is going to address. At least he hasn't, and he has had, you know, what is it, like 8-9 months to do so.